democratic process. In spite of this unprecedented judicial activism, we've attained 24 favorable rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court, their emergency docket, and even more to come. We've done so while ending the weaponization of the prior administration by dropping FACE Act prosecutions, exposing the Arctic frost scandal via congressional disclosure, thank you, Chairman, and restoring one tier of justice in this country. To address the Epstein files, more than 500 attorneys and reviewers spent thousands of hours painstakingly reviewing millions of pages to comply with Congress's law. We've released more than 3 million pages, including 180,000 images, all to the public, while doing our very best in the time frame allotted by the legislation to protect victims. And if you brought us a victim's name that was inadvertently released, we immediately redacted it. All members of Congress, as you know, are invited to visit DOJ to see for yourselves. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Epstein survivors who are here today. I'm a career prosecutor, and despite what the ranking member said, I have spent my entire career fighting for victims, and I will continue to do so. I am deeply sorry for what any victim has been through, especially as a result of that monster. If you have any information to share with law enforcement about anyone who has hurt you or abused you, the FBI is waiting to hear from you. I want you to know that any accusations of criminal wrongdoing will be taken seriously and investigated. The Department of Justice is committed to holding criminals accountable to the fullest extent of the law. In 2025, the FBI arrested over 1,700 child predators, a 10% increase from 2024. We also located 2,700 victims of child exploitation and shut down 3.8 million dark web pedophile accounts. 3.8 million. So please, if you have information to share that needs to be investigated, contact the FBI. Today, I look forward to discussing further our shared obligation to protect the American people, uphold the rule of law, and keep this nation safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. The chair we now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam General, thank you for your extensive remarks, particularly on your continued investigation of those responsible over the years in the Epstein debacle. Obviously, you have an amazingly full docket between civil rights, between criminal, between so-called white-collar crime, and doing so, as the chairman said, at a time in which both you and the president are under attack, and our ICE agents and FBI and others are under attack when they try to enforce the law. I personally want to apologize for those who would embolden, support, or even stand with those lawbreakers that sit on this and other daises here in Congress. My job generally is to talk about patents and trademarks as the chairman of that subcommittee. I'll forego that today because one of my other jobs is the creation and maintenance of Article III judges, and I work with the Chief Justice on that, and we're trying to expand the court. But currently, there are only 677 district court judges. They have very full dockets as well. But you create a tremendous amount of judges, particularly immigration judges. You do so in order to save the court that, but adjudicate, as is requirement, each of those people who claim a right to be here in the United States. And that has been going on under Republican and Democratic administrations for years. What's unique about the Trump administration this time is that you and President Trump have managed to reduce the backlog of people seeking that for the first time in decades. You are getting ahead of that tremendous backlog that caused, for better or worse, the release of millions of people with little pieces of paper saying, come back later when we call you, and often to no avail when you call. So I want to congratulate you on that, because it's an accomplishment you might not take credit for, and the other side would never give you credit for. But I hope you can continue to do that and do more. And I say so for a reason, because much of this hearing will be about Minneapolis and other places in which the backlog of criminal aliens, including in my home state of California, people who have hurt other people, people who have victimized their communities, is extensive. And although the overall number through adjudication may be going on, because of places like my home state, California, you're unable to apprehend people that my sheriffs want apprehended. They desperately want to cooperate, and they're prohibited by law. It is this committee's opinion on this side of the aisle that, in fact, you should be given the ability to demand that participation, and that the release of a known criminal not be considered to be acceptable just because a state or city has declared itself a sanctuary. I want you to opine on just one thing that I think has been misunderstood. As I said earlier, you create and maintain those judges that adjudicate these cases. You also support so many that, in fact, have to make decisions as judges. Knowing that this limitation of so few Article III judges are there, please educate those who seem to miss the point that Article I judges, including bankruptcy judges, including immigration judges, including lots of people with the title appropriately judge, do in fact issue documents that look like, act like, and are normally accepted as warrants, as subpoenas, as demands for state officials to stand aside and allow the production of either an individual or documents. Because I think people are missing the point that these ICE retainers and detainers and so on, they act like they're nothing, when in fact, in the ordinary course, Madam General, you do in fact have Article I judges constantly putting those out, and they are respected normally.
Thank you, Congressman, for talking about all the great judges. And if I could add one thing to that, we are always recruiting and looking for judges. So please reach out to our office for these judges who are handling all these very important matters. We've even added some JAG officers as immigration judges.
Thank you.
And so we're continuing to do that, but we're always seeking qualified lawyers as well to be part of that. And thank you for highlighting that, Congressman.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi, right here. We are joined in this room by some of the thousands of survivors from Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sex trafficking ring. They have shown such incredible courage in speaking out, in demanding accountability to bring the predators and pedophiles to justice. The Epstein Files Transparency Act required your Department of Justice to disclose the perpetrators connected with Epstein's criminal activities and to redact the information of survivors to protect their identities. Let me show you what actually happened. First, in violation of the law, your department has shown a pattern of redacting the names of powerful predators. Here behind me is one example of an email from Epstein to a man whose name was redacted. The email reads, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." Only after members of Congress demanded that we see the unredacted files? Did the world learn the name of this individual, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the chairman and CEO of a company that had financial ties to President Trump's business and personal ties to Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon? Second, the survivors were not similarly protected, also in violation of the law. Here is another email titled Epstein Victim List. We have blurred the names of the survivors for their protection, but your Department of Justice initially released this list of 32 survivors' names with only one name redacted, along with numerous files that disclose not only the names, the emails, and the addresses of survivors, but also nude photographs and even the identities of Jane Does who had been protected for decades until your department released their names. Survivors are now telling us that their families are finding out for the first time that they were trafficked by Epstein. In their words, quote, "This release does not provide closure. It feels like a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors, punish those who came forward, and reinforce the same culture of secrecy that allowed Epstein's crimes to continue for decades." To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before, Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am reclaiming my time, and when I reclaim my time, it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady's reclaimed her
I'm not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say this.
I'll direct it to
what
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a
Mr.
question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is interrupted.
I'm not going to get in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me have my time.
The gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds. You can proceed with your final
Thank you.
17 seconds.
What a massive cover-up this has been and continues to be. Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only to then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level apologize
Chair now recognizes the chair.
on what you have done.
The time of the gentlelady expired. The gentlelady, you have no time to yield back. We appreciate that. We appreciate the thought. And I would argue the central issue in the last election, the presidential election, was securing the border. The gentleman from Arizona who knows something about securing the border is up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. In 2022, Lafarge, which is a French cement company, pled guilty in U.S. federal court to participating in a criminal conspiracy with ISIS. That conspiracy contributed to the deaths of U.S. service members fighting in Syria during Operation Inherent Resolve. As part of the plea agreement, Lafarge was required to pay more than $775 million into DOJ's asset forfeiture fund. In February 2025, my colleagues and I sent you a letter urging the department to review the petitions for remission submitted by the families of those fallen service members, including several of my constituents. The previous administration ignored these victims and our requests and left their petitions unresolved. My question for you on this particular issue is if you're willing to work to ensure those families that their petitions will be reviewed and brought to a resolution.
Congressman, we are aware of that, and we're committed to doing everything we can to support the victims and work with you. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, appreciate your answer. And now let's go to something that is also pressing that I've been working on for years, and this is the FISA Section 702 and Arctic frost. In January 2025, you testified before the U.S. Senate and agreed with Senator Lee that, quote, anytime an American citizen's private communications are intercepted or stored, whether through incidental collection or otherwise, those communications should not be searched without some showing of probable cause, close quote. You still hold that view today, I assume?
Yes.
And during the most recent FISA reauthorization, I offered an amendment to establish a clear warrant requirement for searches of Americans' data while preserving every publicly cited operational exception, including emergencies, defensive queries, cybersecurity threats. And my intent was to ensure the Department of Justice could continue to keep Americans safe while also ending warrantless searches of U.S. persons' data. Are there any additional circumstances or exceptions that you believe must be included to ensure DOJ can continue to operate effectively while still protecting American citizens' data and privacy?
Yeah, Congressman, we are committed to working with Congress to uncover weaponization and other misconduct by Jack Smith, by others, Arctic frost, everything that happened under the past administration. And we are committed to working with you on that. And we are working with Chairman Jordan, with the House Intel, with all of our my fellow cabinet members on resolving that issue.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up Arctic frost, because Section 702 was used in the Arctic frost investigation.
It was.
And information derived was used by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And my question has always been, and no one's been able to answer this, is what was the legal predicate for using a foreign intelligence authority in the Arctic frost investigation? Have you been able to ascertain any legal predicate?
Congressman, what I can tell you today is that has been referred to my office. I can't discuss anything regarding that because it is very active and ongoing.
And you probably can't answer this one either, but I really want to know if Section 702 queries related to that matter involved members of Congress, which we know at some level it did, congressional staff, which we know at some level did. We've heard that journalists or other U.S. persons not suspecting of acting as foreign agents were also caught up in that. Can you answer that question and say whether queries did cover all those groups I just identified?
It is a very active pending investigation within my office. However, I believe many members of Congress have stated that their phones were part of Arctic frost. We are well aware of that, and we are taking this very seriously, and this is a very active investigation. And I would keep going and say if any member of the Democrat Party, if any of them, if that had happened to them, we would take that just as serious as we do. And they should be jumping up and down, screaming, supporting you and what you want to do, because this should be a bipartisan issue.
Well, I hope it is a bipartisan issue. You know, I'll just leave with these last couple of questions, which I'm sure fall into the same investigation privilege. But that's this: how many such queries were actually conducted overall? This is outside Arctic frost in the prior year by the FBI or other intelligence community. And particularly, we really need to know What were the legal standards applied? Did they use probable cause? Did they use reasonable articulable suspicion? Or did they have no individualized suspicion and just were gathering up information? And that's beyond the investigation with regard to Arctic frost. I don't expect you to have that information today, but if you can help get that information so we can understand the extensive nature of this continued misuse of 702, it would be very particularly helpful.
And it was extensive. Yes, Congressman. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
I have a UC, Mr. Chairman.
And that is the gentlelady from Texas.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record. El Paso airspace reopened after FAA quickly rescinds 10-day flights restriction. This was published by the Texas Tribune on February 11th, 2026, and it says it was because of an impasse with the DOD over the use of unmanned military aircraft and not triggered by Mexican cartel drones.
Without objection.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I didn't hear back about the second round of questions. I assume that's not happening. I just want to be able to assure the members, certainly on my side, if not both sides.
That's not a point of order.
No, that every member will get 5 minutes with the witness. Will there be 5 minutes for each?
Yeah, you get 5 minutes. Yeah.
With the witness. Okay, very good.
Yeah. Okay. And are you up next? Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by acknowledging the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific abuse who are in the room with us today. I want to thank all of you for your bravery in speaking out. And I want to say that you and the other survivors of these heinous crimes deserve better from this Department of Justice. In particular, it is shocking that the department did not redact the names of Epstein's victims, but it did redact the names of their abusers. I don't know whether this was done out of incompetence or whether it was deliberate and malicious, but either way, it is completely unacceptable. Even more troubling, the DOJ has failed to bring any of these perpetrators to justice. Instead, it has engaged in a relentless pursuit of Donald Trump's perceived enemies. I want to focus on just one example. The Attorney General of my home state of New York, Tish James. This DOJ has been hell-bent on securing an indictment against Ms. James for something, anything, simply because she held Donald Trump's companies accountable for years of financial fraud. And indeed, the department manufactured an investigation against her for alleged, quote, mortgage fraud. But the U.S. attorney leading the investigation, Eric Siebert, a Trump appointee, refused to bring charges against Ms. James because there was simply no evidence. Unfortunately, a prosecutor who refuses to do Trump's bidding has no place in this DOJ, so Mr. Siebert was forced out. Trump could not contain his fury that he expressed to you in a social media post addressed to you by name. I'm sure you've seen it. Quote, I fired him and there is a great case, he wrote to you about Mr. Siebert. Then we moved down. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. And obviously, you followed that order. Lindsay Halligan, Trump's former defense lawyer who had never prosecuted a case in her life, was installed to replace Mr. Siebert, and it was clear that part of her mandate was to go after Ms. James. Halligan immediately sought an indictment, which a court dismissed because Halligan was illegally put into the role. But your department was undeterred, and not once, but twice, it tried to indict Attorney General James in separate courts. Both grand juries rejected you and refused to indict her. It is practically unheard of for a grand jury to refuse an indictment. In 2016, it happened in just 6 cases out of over 150,000 offenses. And you had it happen twice in the same week, in 2 different courts. That must have been humiliating. And now there are reports that you are continuing to investigate her. The amount of resources that have gone into targeting Attorney General James, months of investigations, multiple failed indictments, is astounding. Since your own prosecutors told you that there is not enough evidence to support a conviction, it's clear that you were going after her simply because she held President Trump accountable and he wants to punish her. And she is just one name on a long list of Trump political enemies that DOJ is reportedly targeting. From Jerome Powell and Lisa Cook at the Federal Reserve to James Comey, numerous Democratic members of Congress, John Brennan, Jack Smith, Democratic officials in Minnesota, Chris Krebs, Miles Taylor, and more. And those are just the ones we know about. In contrast to these politically motivated investigations, grasping at something they can charge their enemies with, we now have concrete evidence of disgusting criminality revealed in the Epstein files. So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question the
ridiculous.
way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
the time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Reclaiming my time.
I think it's very
Reclaiming my
interesting.
time.
You can
that
reclaim
he
your
talks
time,
about
but
they
reclaiming my time,
indicted.
Mr.
The
Chairman.
president said they
Close the
indicted
clock.
him
Mr.
twice.
Chairman, please
They
stop the
sure
clock and
did.
stop the
They
clock and
indicted.
restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these
Committee will be in order.
theatrics.
The time
Reclaiming my
belongs to
time
the
and roll
gentleman
back
from
the
New
clock,
York.
please.
We will give you a few more seconds. We will do that. But when
Reclaiming
you ask
my-
a question, the witness
question
gets to
was-
answer. You may not like the answer, but she
Right.
gets
The
to answer.
question was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like
Que-
the answer,
Reclaiming
Chairman,
my time.
because it's honest.
Reclaiming
So
my-
he asked a
Reclaiming my
4-minute
time.
question.
Restore 45
and
seconds to
I am
Mr. Nadler,
going
please,
to
Mr. Chairman.
Reclaiming my time.
Answer.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
Reclaiming-
Not on our time. No way.
Reclaiming-
And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me
Yeah, oh, I
anything,
did tell you because we
washed
saw
up
what you did in the
loser
Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Time, and I should get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I
Not a
said that
few more,
already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr. Nadler. Go
All
right
right.
ahead.
My time. The answer to my question, how many of Epstein's co-conspirators has she indicted, is 0. You have been the Attorney General for a whole year, and your DOJ fired the lead prosecutor of this case, sat on evidence this entire time, and claimed falsely last July that there were no more leads. It took an act of Congress for you to finally release part of the Epstein files, and when you did, you included personal information about the victims while protecting the names of abusers.
Time of the gentleman
None
has
of the perpetrators have
expired.
been brought to justice, but enormous resources
Time
have been
of the
dedicated to
gentleman has
pursuing Trump's
expired,
enemies.
and
It's
obviously
clear
there
that
was-
under your leadership, the Department of Justice
There
no
was
longer
no
works for
question
American
in there
people. It works
for her to
for Donald
respond to.
Trump. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
May I answer?
I think our next questioner, Madam Attorney General, is going to give you time to respond to
Thank you, Chairman.
all kinds of things. So we will turn to the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes.
Ms. Bondi, you go right ahead. I'm over here. The time is yours.
Thank you. First, he brought up the president saying they indicted me twice. They sure did. They tried to impeach him twice. And you, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. I was on the other side. I lived that with you. During impeachment, you said the president conspired, sought foreign interference in the 2016 election. Robert Mueller found no evidence, none, of foreign interference in 2016. Have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump? You all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over, the Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan,
Committee will be in order.
Mr. Jordan, am I going to get an
Wow.
extra 45 seconds added to my time?
The committee will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General can respond.
Thank you. The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is crazy. They said it couldn't be done in 4 years, yet President Trump has done it in 1 year. National median rents have fallen to a 4-year low thanks to Donald Trump. That's why they want to focus on Epstein and our most transparent president in the nation's history. The murder rate, as I said, has plummeted to a 125-year low thanks to Donald Trump. For an unprecedented 9 straight months, there were 0 illegal border crossings at the southern border. That's what we should be focused on. All the great work that this president has done and will continue to do to keep America safe and to make Americans safe.
Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. I agree with you totally. I think you've done a fine job. I think that Democrats, in fact, should be apologizing to the Epstein victims for doing nothing during the 4 years that they were running the government. We did not hear about this, and it took you and President Trump to finally provide transparency and give answers to the American people, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you also for standing up for truth today and for fighting back against the theatrics and the time waste that you will endure over the next hour or two. I want to apologize on behalf of my colleagues on the left. They're not all that bad, but they've got to put on a show. And I'm sorry that you have to go through that. And I would like to yield the last, I'd say 40, even 40 is 80 seconds. The clock says 40, but I've got 80 seconds since I was so rudely interrupted, and I'll give all 80 seconds to Chairman Jordan.
And I would just yield to the Attorney General if she has anything to add.
I'm fine to continue. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, the chair now recognizes, the gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would note that Mr. Nadler's question has not yet been answered, but I want to start by asking that out of respect for the American public and the Epstein survivors, some of whom, of course, are here today, that we can have a transparent conversation and get the public the answers they deserve. I want to briefly direct your attention to 2 documents I'm hoping we will put up on the screen. In the first, an individual emails Jeffrey Epstein asking whether a woman identified as M was pro or civilian, and Epstein responds that she was a civilian, Russian, and fun. In the second email, Epstein writes to Steve Tisch about a Ukrainian girl, noting that she was, quote, a little freaked out by the age difference and stating that he would try to convince her not to return to Ukraine. He then instructs Mr. Tisch to call him, adding, I don't like records of these conversations. So I'd like to ask a straightforward question that really is either a yes or no answer. Do these emails constitute credible evidence, not proof, but credible evidence warning further investigation into whether Steve Tisch was involved in Epstein's criminal conduct? Do you think yes or no?
I'm not going to play a yes-no game with you, but I will answer the question to the best of my ability. As I said, we will look and investigate any case involving any victim. I'm not familiar, there were 3 million pages, of course, with that email, but of course, we will look into anything. The documents have been released, 3 million. The redacted versions, we left them open for all of you to come view. I believe you view them. If not, will you have some copies?
I'd like to.
But could I finish, please? I'm not being rude, please.
I only have 5 minutes.
No, yeah, and I only have 30 seconds based on your filibustering.
Well, you didn't give a yes or no
California.
answer, so let me just go further. Director Patel testified in this committee room that there was no credible information indicating that Epstein trafficked victims to anyone else. And glancing at the documents, that proves that's not the case. In July, your department issued a memo stating that it had conducted an exhaustive review of the Epstein files and concluded that no additional individuals would be charged. So I did go over to the Department of Justice yesterday. I would note that 400 and all our 35 members are in the House, and there's 4 computers. So it would take many months to actually have the time. I only had a few hours. I think the transparency argument is really kind of a sham because it's not really possible.
Whoa. Did you have to wait to get a computer?
It is not possible to really go in. I did, however, see a U.S. attorney information for the Southern District of New York indicating that there were additional survivors and probable co-conspirators. Other members of Congress have uncovered likely co-conspirators whose names were blocked out. Now, the Epstein File Transparency Act, which all but one member of this House voted for and the president signed, requires the department to release everything except that it needs to be redacted to protect the victims or an ongoing prosecution, which apparently there is none from the testimony we have received. I am concerned that this act has not been fully complied with. When Director Patel came to the committee, he admitted that up to 1,000 FBI agents had gone through the files and redacted President Trump's name from them. And it's pretty clear that what has been transmitted from the FBI continues to redact President Trump's name, even though he is mentioned thousands of times in these files. So I think the credibility of the department in terms of complying with the act has been damaged. And I think the department's credibility has been damaged in other ways. I think we all saw the horrible video of American citizens being killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. And I think how the department has handled these cases raises a lot of doubt about the department. State and local police in Minnesota got a court order to get access to the crime scene to be sure evidence would be properly preserved by federal agents. But they took the agents defied the court order, and in a departure from general policy, the DOJ is not collaborating with state and local law enforcement on these homicides. So I really think that is a disgraceful approach to the homicides of American citizens, and really does nothing to bring credit to your department. And Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman, did you?
None.
And nor did
Mr.
she
Chairman,
post
regular
anything.
order, please.
She
Regular
posted
order.
nothing on her X account, on her Twitter account during the Biden years.
Gentlelady.
Yet now, all of a sudden,
question
she's
asked.
going after
Committee will be in
point of
order.
There was no
Committee will
question
be in
asked
order.
of the Attorney General. She doesn't just get to
Committee will be in order.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Committee will be in order.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Lady can state her point of order.
When a witness attacks,
Not a valid point of order. You got to state.
She hasn't completed her point of order yet.
Gotta
Please let her
cite-
speak, Mr. Chairman. Let's have some regular order
Got it.
here.
Regular order is you got to state the rule. And she
I am
didn't do it.
trying to make a point of order that the witness,
And what rule are you referring to?
without responding to a question, has attacked me personally. I think it's pathetic that she can't answer the questions and
First
instead
time
is
that
attacking
is not even close
members
to a
of the
point of
committee.
order. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
In August of last year, I sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking for assistance in seeking compensation for the town of Lac du Flambeau. Town of Lac du Flambeau is in my district, and your office replied that it was an ongoing matter and unable to comment on it, which I understand. That's just fine. But I want to set this up just as a reminder. So 3 years ago, it was at this time of year that 4 roads were blockaded in the town of Lac du Flambeau, and the temperature was 25 below zero. People had to park their cars at a neighbor's place, take the snowmobile across the lake to get their car, and then be able to drive into town. There were people 80 and 90 years old that could not, were very concerned that they'd be able to get emergency medical services. And the perpetrators of this, the tribe out there, they demanded compensation from the town. I would call it extortion. They ultimately got $600,000 from the town of Lac du Flambeau. The unfortunate part, Mr. Chairman, is that the Biden administration took the side of the perpetrators who closed those roads off, and the Biden administration made it clear to the town of Lac du Flambeau that we are not on your side in regards to this. Well, fortunately, there was a federal judge that said, no, this is wrong, what happened, and these roads should be left open, they should continue to be left open. My question to you is, are you willing to work with my office and with the town of Lac du Flambeau to further investigate this matter and seek compensation from the tribal government after their extortion of $600,000 from this little town in northern Wisconsin?
Congressman, you do a great job representing your district. And yes, we would more than welcome working with you, and we are familiar with that investigation.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, we're highlighting these miscarriages of justice in the previous administration. This is just another one of those small examples, no different than the Catholic Diocese in Richmond and many others that you have retold so many times. But here's another instance of what they did to a small town and nearly bankrupted them as a result of it. Fortunately, there was a federal judge that saw through it and has fixed it. I want to move on to fraud enforcement. You've established a National Fraud Enforcement Division. Is that correct, Madam Attorney General?
Yes, Congressman.
Has this new division begun any investigations and getting after those individuals that have committed the rampant fraud we've seen, like in Minnesota?
Well, it's not only rampant in Minnesota, it's rampant throughout this country. Much of it is in California, as you know, and other places. Yes, we are working on it actively. Our criminal fraud division has been working on it. We are expanding that. It was the Vice President's idea to come up with this amazing separate fraud division, which we are establishing and going nonstop, not only to expose the fraud in Minnesota, but around the country. It's taxpayer dollars that have been stolen from the American people, and we are committed to recovering that money and holding those people accountable.
Mr. Chairman, I would remind everyone here, why did this happen in Minneapolis? Why did federal law enforcement have to go to Minneapolis? Because of industrial scale fraud. It was an assistant United States attorney that said, this is industrial scale fraud that's going on in Minnesota at this point. I sent a letter to our governor in Wisconsin. We're right across the border there. My district is only 20 miles from the city of Minneapolis. And I asked him to open the books for a federal audit on food stamps and Medicaid. Don't you think it would be a good idea for every governor to do that at this point?
It protects the citizens, and I can't understand why that's not happening. And yes, I do think that's a great idea. It's happening around this country. And when our new division with Colin McDonald is established, it's established when Colin is confirmed. He's amazing. I think you've met with him, you said, Chairman. When that is established, we're going to work on both sides of the aisle. That's what we want to do, to stop fraud in every city, in every state in this country. We will continue to fight for the American people.
So you would encourage every governor across the United States, after what we have seen in Minnesota, what we almost certainly know is happening in other states, you mentioned California, you would agree that every governor should avail themselves of federal resources to make sure that this industrial scale fraud is rooted out to protect the taxpayers of the United States. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank you for holding this hearing and holding it in a proper fashion as you have. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of the victims of the Epstein case who've come here to attend this hearing, for doing it and for being brave and trying to move this justice forward. I apologize, I can't do it, but the Attorney General not recognizing you, that's embarrassing. I am from Memphis, General Bondi. And Memphis does have the task force there. The Memphis Safe Task Force has been operating in Memphis for several months. And we do have a Democratic mayor, Paul Young, and he's not against the task force, but he is against ICE being in Memphis, and he's not in favor of the National Guard being in Memphis. And I concur with him on those positions. I think the DEA being there, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, the FBI, who have been in Memphis in other ways, having more people there is good for Memphis. Crime has gone down in Memphis, but it went down 25% before the task force got there under the direction of Mayor Young and Director Davis, Chief Davis. It's gone down about 15% more since then, and that's good. But I would like to comment that Mexico City's homicide rate has gone down 40% during the same time when Memphis has only gone down 25%, and that's not necessarily because of the task force, although the mayor says he thinks it's helped. So I thank you for that. You would agree, I presume, that violent crime in communities across our country is critically important, and that's why the task force is there. Is that not true?
Yes, and if I can just add to that, I think the surge, the FBI, our FBI under the leadership of Director Patel came in and did a surge in Memphis.
Earlier.
Prior to the task force.
Yeah,
and thank you for saying that about Mayor Young. He's been great to work with, and thank you.
He's a good guy.
He's a very good guy.
One problem I've got with where we are in priorities here. A recent Department of Justice, National Institute of Justice report based on arrest records in Texas and in California found that undocumented immigrants were less than half as likely as U.S.-born Americans to be arrested for homicide. And this pattern holds for assault, sexual assault, robbery, burglary, theft, and arson. Half as likely to be arrested for drug offenses. So I ask you, and I've written to you about this, there are TV ads that run that say to local law enforcement, specifically, says, are you tired of having your hands handcuffed because you can't do the things you wanted to do when you joined? And if you want to do something different, join ICE, and you'll get a $50,000 bonus, and we'll pay off your debts, student debts, and we'll help you with pensions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're encouraging local law enforcement to leave local law enforcement and go to work for ICE. We need people working in the front lines and local law enforcement to protect our citizens from the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst are not the immigrants. The worst of the worst, records show, are native-born Americans, and they are committing crimes that hurt our citizens and our cities, and you're working against it, and thank you for that. But by trying to get our local law enforcement, where we have an undercount of officers in Memphis, to leave Memphis and go to work for ICE to deport people is a wrong priority. Why are we trying to get people, policemen who are working on the front lines, to leave the front lines, take the $50,000 and go to work for ICE and instead of working to fight the worst of the worst?
Congressman, I have not yet seen that commercial, that ad. I would argue that we need strong people in both local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and all of our federal agencies working together. I've seen some of the worst violent criminals who were in this country illegally. We both know that. And in Memphis, working hand in hand, I want to stick with Memphis and your mayor and what you discussed, because there have been nearly 6,000 arrests as of February 8th, and I think you agree with this, in your district, and almost 600 gang members. What we found in Memphis, a lot of the gangs are local gangs. But 600 gang members were taken off the streets.
Let me reclaim my time, because I've only got 40 seconds. I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah.
I thank you for that.
And 148 missing children were recovered by all of us working together, and nearly 1,000 illegal guns were seized as a result of us working together.
And I don't disagree with some of the things you said, but there are questions about those children, but it's a different thing. The fact is, ICE is running rampant, and you are not investigating them. When they killed Mr. Prete, and Ms. Good, that was an execution, and you did not investigate it. And you tried to investigate Ms. Good's widow, and you tried to investigate Mr. Prete. They were executed like Kristi Noem executed her dog. And that was wrong. And you should investigate those people, and you should investigate anybody that uses a weapon, federal official or not, for civil rights violations. I yield back the balance.
Gentleman yields back his time. Madam Attorney General, anytime you need a break, just let us know. If not, we'll just keep going. The chair is now recognized for 5 minutes. Madam Attorney General, you're not allowed to exercise your constitutional rights in a way that tramples on someone else's, are you?
No.
No, you can't do that. I mean, you have a right to petition the government under the First Amendment. That doesn't mean you can come into this room and start screaming at Mr. Raskin or me or anybody else and disrupt a congressional hearing. You have a right to protest on the street, but that doesn't give you a right to go into the Capitol and disrupt Congress. Something these guys talk about every day. You can't do that. So when Don Lemon said that he was exercising his First Amendment free press rights, freedom of the press rights, that's not really accurate because he was trampling on other individuals' rights. Is that true?
Chairman, we will always protect our churches and the freedom of religion. And yes, that's accurate.
First right mentioned under the First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom to practice your faith the way you think the good Lord wants you to, right?
That's right, under the federal government.
And isn't it true that Mr. Lemon met at a shopping center with the rioters who entered City's Church in St. Paul, met with them prior to marching to the church?
He did meet, and this is a pending case right now, so I will only stick to what is in the four corners of the unsealed indictment, if I could, Chairman.
Yeah, I'm
There's a lot more that will come out. But under the four corners of the indictment, yes, he did. They had an operation called Operation Pull-Up. They said they were gearing for a resistance. They met in a parking lot and they caravanned to a church on a Sunday morning when people were worshiping together.
And Mr. Lemon said that he live streamed before entering the church with the rioters. Didn't he say we're going to head to the operation? Didn't he say this he said this on camera, is that right?
Yes, Chairman,
yeah.
And more.
That he was in Minnesota and that, as you said, they were gearing up for an operation. So you can't do that. This is why this is, I think, so important that this guy be held accountable, and I think why you guys have charged him and indicted him. Moving to the second subject here, will John Brennan be indicted? Mr. Brennan lied to the committee, which you're not supposed to do. Last Congress, when we deposed him, he definitely, 18 U.S.C. 1001, we're all familiar with it. He lied to the committee, and the committee, the Congress, and I think the country would like to know if, in fact, he's going to be indicted for lying to, and here's why it's so important. I'll give you a chance to respond. Here's why it's so important. It wasn't just that he lied to us, it's what he lied to us about. He lied to us about when all this weaponization against the President of the United States started. He lied to us about the dossier, and specifically what role the dossier played in the intelligence community assessment. Because we know back when President Trump was first elected, first term, this is when it all started, which led to the Mueller and to the impeachment and to the Jack Smith and all the stuff that's happened in the last decade. But it began here, and he lied to Congress about the role he played. And I just want to read a couple of things he said during that deposition before I give you a chance to respond. Mr. Brennan, when asked a question, said the CIA was not involved at all with the dossier. He said it was their purview, FBI's purview, and not ours. He also said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. Well, that's interesting because declassified information that was declassified this past summer by the CIA says something entirely different. It says, Brennan, I want to put this one up if we have it. It says, Brennan ultimately formalized his position in writing, stating that, quote, this is released by the CIA Director Ratcliffe, my bottom line is that what I believe that information warrants inclusion in the report. He was further asked by an CIA official. The same officer said when he approached the director and asked that the director refused to remove it after being explained this wasn't good. With the dossier's many flaws, he said, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So this is John Brennan using that document to change intelligence community assessment, which I think led to all the stuff we've seen over the last decade. And I think this committee in the country, Congress in the country, would like to know if Mr. Brennan is going to be indicted.
What I can confirm is that we have received a referral from you, Chairman Jordan, to investigate John Brennan. His attorneys have made some public